So when you introduce our opinions, it just ruins the data, just to warn you. Like this
Of course.
We shoot ourselves entirely, it's over. Like, the whole thing should burn. But anyway, here we are.
Welcome to Disparate Worlds, where an irresistible force meets an immovable object. I am an Ashes of Creation fanboy, and I am cosplaying, per the request of last week, I am cosplaying Sechari.
Okay. Well, you look beautiful, sir.
Well, thank you. I thought that I should. You asked me to cosplay an Ashes fanboy, so I thought I would do you because
That's
I
hilarious.
look up to you. So yes. And here we are on Disparate Worlds, comparing and contrasting the worlds of Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen, and Ashes of Creation.
I don't even know what to think about this. I don't want to acknowledge it to guys. I don't want to encourage him. Because, bad habits and all, and if you feed the wolf, it becomes a thing, so...
That's so hot.
Oh, I was actually kind of hoping that you'd keep it going all episode.
It's brutally hot, man. It's all yarn.
Tell you what, you can't handle the Sechari heat. I hear you. It sounds like a thing. Yes, hello to you, friends. Welcome to our episode number 7, the final of our trio of episodes covering the various races in Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen, and Ashes of Creation. There's not much news to cover, Mox, this episode. We don't have anything to say.
Do you know what that means? That gives us more time to talk about how great the races of Pantheon are.
Actually, it gives us more time to argue. Especially given that this is a Worlds episode. Whenever you see the Worlds something in our title, it means it's going to be a comparison between the games episode, and not one that's just kind of dedicated. So, Worlds populating. We're talking about the populations and the races of each. This is going to be a blast.
No, I just have to check. Am I flagged for PvP down here? Is my name red? Like, just to make sure that it's...
It is now.
Excellent. All right.
All right, so you are flagged for PvP. Let's do this.
All right.
Okay, so it is time to get into the episode. So, episode 5, we did a deep dive, in-depth, full, breakdown of what we thought about Pantheon, Rise of the Fallen's races. Now, we have been careful throughout these episodes not to really just give you the information dump. Here's the various races, here's their passives, all of that stuff. That stuff has been done to death by countless other people out there, so we thought we would just point you their direction, go find them, go check them out, to get the information. But what we wanted to do is give our breakdown, our analysis of that, and I think we've done a decent job, Mox. I don't know if you agree.
Yeah, I think we did good. I enjoyed doing those episodes. I learned some, so I was glad that we did it.
Yes.
And I am happy to now be able to actually discuss, the whole idea of this channel is to compare the two games. So this is our chance now to finally, dig in and say, all right, based on some empirical data and our own opinions added in there, who's doing a better job.
Yeah. So when you introduce our opinions, it just ruins the data, just to warn you.
Of course.
We shoot ourselves entirely, it's over. The whole thing should burn. But anyway, here we are. So exactly. Episode 5, we did do our deep dive on Pantheon's races. And then in episode 6, we did our deep dive on Ashes of Creation's races. We asked the same questions of both games, but we just kind of, whatever was more pertinent, we got into. With regard to what we're thinking about each respective game. This episode 7, is all about the competition and the comparison between the two.
Right.
So we have some categories that we have defined. I'm going to list them now, and then what we're going to do for each when we discuss the category is stop and define it. Then we'll have our discussion about it, what we think and how we think the two stack up, and then we will decide. So define, discuss, decide is our plan for each of these categories. And when we decide, we're going to just declare for that category, which of the two games we think is the winner. So that's the plan for this episode.
And we have agreed with each other to be honest and not just be fanboys. Like we're not here to just say that our game is better and
Yes. Stonewall, yeah, totally.
Yeah, exactly. The idea is to, actually decide, based on the stuff, which game is doing a better job of it. And that's at this pre-alpha point that we're at. The things may change. 6 months from now, a particular category may flip-flop. I doubt every category would change, but certainly some categories may change in that time frame.
Yeah, these are moving targets. We're pre-alpha in both of them, at least the recording of this episode. I think Ashes of Creation's Alpha 1 is about to start real soon.
Right.
And then we can't say that anymore. We can't say we're pre-alpha in both. It's like we're alpha in one. And anyway, that's for another discussion. The categories. The first one is aesthetic. We're going to discuss quantity, racial bonuses, lore, politics, and cooperative playability. Now, again, we're going to define what we mean by each of those when we get into the discussion regarding each. So, let us start with our first category, aesthetic. What we mean by aesthetic is we've kind of lumped everything together that talks about what a race looks like. So we have the concept art, the character models, what we've seen with regard to clothing and armor, the things that they and just the idea of what this race is, and architecture as well. I think we've discussed quite extensively their housing, the way that they express themselves as a race through player housing and races, and villages, and the way that those things look. So we're going to lump architecture into the aesthetic category. So with regard to aesthetic, Mox, what is your I guess you're most familiar with Pantheon. That's the one that you came to the table representing.
Right.
Start with Pantheon for me. How do you think Pantheon stacks up to Ashes with regard to its aesthetics?
I have to say it's definitely behind Ashes, simply because of a lack of sharing of information. Like being a smaller studio, they don't have the resources to share. I think it's probably the main reason. They just went through Project Fairtale, where they kind of invented the game almost. So they haven't had the time to refine stuff and do that. I do know that things have changed. Like if you look at some live stream information from on YouTube, stuff from 2 years ago versus stuff that came out late this year, there's a vast improvement to kind of how things look, and but that all being said, we've still seen things like furniture from Ashes of Creation. We've seen, and it's incredible furniture, as we mentioned last week.
Mox really wants that stove, guys.
I do. I like to cook. We've seen, various different models of buildings, architecture for various races. So each of the races has its own distinct, kind of culture that shows in their architecture, shows in their armor. I think again we mentioned last week, when you put a piece of armor on a different class, it looks different.
Right.
So I think that aesthetics-wise, that Pantheon just doesn't really have anything that matches up to that level of detail that we're seeing.
Okay, so you're talking about architecture and furniture as a subcategory. What then about character art and concept models?
Well, this is going to tie into when we get to quantity of races. Pantheon has more of those.
Yes.
So, and they are definitely more diverse. So there is something to be said that at least with character models, Pantheon is better. But that's simply just a side effect of having more.
Yes.
So if you have 9 distinct races, you're going to have 9 distinct character models. And then even within that, they have elves, which have 2 different types that are going to be slightly different. So
right. And I think that's fair. I think so. You in a sense, the quantity, and we'll talk about what all that means here in a minute, does kind of factor in here, because if you have one race let's take the Dark Mirror, for instance, right? Where they're a water people. They've got the blue skin. There's a different color to their eyes. You know, there's some shape differences. Maybe, you know, I'm not quite sure really what the concept details are right now, at least the implementation of them.
Right.
But I've seen the concept art. And
right.
I like what they've done with that, and the way that the bones seem to come through the face of the, you know, what's that other one? The scar. Right. So you've got that where those are strong concepts for races.
Right.
Now, I think I agree with you about the architecture is weak. We're seeing so much more from the Ashes side, where they're real strong in here's how this race expresses itself in the tents, and I think this last dev live stream they were showing like the tents of the Kalar, I think it was. So very cool, very cool there. But then they don't quite have the diversity of the way, all of these have a kind of homogeneous skin color. For instance, nobody's got blue skin, right, or red skin. Like they're all very much elves and dwarves and humans with the skin types of each that we're all very well familiar with. So
right.
So let me suggest what I think this is going to be. I think that Pantheon wins for the concept art and the character modeling, but I think that Ashes wins for the architecture and furniture. What do you think of that?
And the clothing and armor.
Clothing and armor, I don't know. I mean, like, I think we know more about the clothing and armor from the Ashes side.
Right, so don't we have to give that win to Ashes because, again, if the studio's giving us that information and then putting out a new set of armor every month for their backers, you almost have to give that category to them just based on lack of information coming from Visionary Realms.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you're going to miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Right. Exactly.
And so I think that's fair. I think given those subcategories, it sounds to me like we are agreeing on an Ashes win for the aesthetic category.
Yeah, I agree. And I think where Visionary Realms does well in aesthetics is not as strong as where Intrepid is doing with aesthetics. Right. So
not yet,
I definitely agree.
Right?
Ashes. What's that?
Yeah, I mean, not yet. I mean, we're pre-alpha. There's a long road ahead. We could probably have this same discussion at the launch of the game and have wildly different results here. So.
And I think that had Pantheon had the team that Ashes had from the get-go,
right,
we'd be having a very different discussion. I think actually we talk about Pantheon's like in production now, as opposed to and being live, as opposed to being still pre-launch.
Right.
So but I agree. Ashes definitely takes that category, and I'm happy to hand it to them because they've done a good job with it.
Okay, so the second category is quantity. Now we aren't quite sure what we mean by quantity. I think we have an idea, but we get caught in the semantics.
Yeah, I think we're splitting hairs here. Like, we have this divided down into diversity and variety, which really, are they the same thing, or is it like, okay, I have X number of choices, then within those choices, what choices do I have? Is kind of like how it breaks down. So I think that in the Ashes world, you have 5 choices, and then those 4 of those 5 choices split.
Yes, okay, into sub categories of those 4. Right.
Exactly. And then with Pantheon, you have 9 choices, and then one of those diverges.
Yes.
The L. So you definitely have 9 distinct races in Pantheon. Yes. And they are all you would never confuse one for the other. Like, you're never gonna walk up to somebody and be like, "Oh, are you a Veyloon elf or a Veyloon human or what's the other one? The
Kalar for the human.
Kalar
in Ashes, yes.
Like, which human are you? Like, You're a human.
Right.
Who cares? You know,
Right.
in the grand scheme of things, who cares?
I'm profiling you, sir.
Yeah, right.
Did you assume my sub race?
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of fun with this.
So, with the only place where you have a lot of choices, apparently in race creation and character selection, is that bonus race in Ashes, where you can have like is that do you have the reticulated leg, like where it goes backwards, like you have one of those, like there's all kinds of stuff like in there that apparently you can choose, and
it's because there's a diversity, like there's a lot of diversity from what I'm seeing so far of the Talnar. There's a lot in there, but it's still kind of concepty right now. It's not very fleshed out, so I don't quite know. They may be more ambitious and saying, hey, this looks great, isn't it? And then when reality comes, well, because you have to, all of the armor has to work on those concept, or those models, right?
Right.
If your knee bends backwards, your pants have to bend backwards. How's that going to look? So.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know if they're being too ambitious. It's still very early with the Talnar, but yeah, I mean, I agree with you that's at least where we're seeing the vast majority of diversity on the Ashes side.
Right. So I think we've kind of had this discussion that. As far as the quantity is concerned, this is like Ashes is not measuring up to Pantheon.
Yeah, I mean, so let me offer my analysis of this. I think that we're comparing apples to oranges in this category. Very, because they're so different, and there's another category. I think when we get to racial bonuses, I think we're kind of doing the same thing there, which is next. So we'll talk about that then. But how do you? So what I think has happened on the Ashes side is that they've been too conservative. We have humans and elves and dwarves and orcs. I'm trying not to confuse. Right. Yeah, we have orcs
with ogres.
Yeah, orcs and we've done that before too. So yes. Yeah, it's orcs. Okay, so it's very Tolkien-esque, well decided, well understood. And what they've said is, okay, pick something that we know very well. Now here's a variety of it. Okay, here's a human, but you can pick a human with this culture or with that culture, and each culture has its kind of its variety, its history, or whatever there is to it. But that's very conservative to start there, compared to Pantheon, where they go, okay, we want a fish race, and we want a race of raptors where they've got their bones showing through their skin. And then you get elves as well, right? Kind of a thing. Right. Like, throw that in there. But I mean, like, to me, hands down, I think Pantheon wins on the diversity side of things. Like the sheer smorgasbord, I think was the word that we were using of what all is out there,
exactly,
that you can pick from. So,
but then and this is a question for down the road: is have you limited then what you can offer as an expansion race? So
yes, I mean, because if you have 9 different races, when they do an expansion, and we've mentioned this, what's a 10th? Oh well, that's just another race on top of that. Whereas if you come in with something into the Ashes world with a new race, that's gonna make a splash. Okay, so I think when it comes to the quantity category, Mox, I think you and I both agree Pantheon is the winner of that one.
Yep, I think we're tied 1-1.
Okay, tied 1-1 so far. Okay. Racial bonuses is the next one, and I think, as I mentioned, we are also comparing apples to oranges for this category.
To a degree. I mean, it's just really it's apples and oranges in implementation. They still both have some sort of, as you like to say, what am I getting above and beyond when I pick this race? So what is that thing?
So let's do it. Let's define what we mean by racial bonuses real quick. We have the aesthetic of the race. What does it look like? And besides just a skin, really that's the difference between most races. So people try to make it more meaningful in these games by saying, okay, there's racial passives. If you roll a human, there are things humans are good at that you will be good at in the game. So there's more to it. It's more meaningful to be a human versus a Scar. More meaningful to be, Valoon versus, I don't know,
in certain circumstances.
Yes, in certain circumstances, and that's kind of what passives say. Like, look, hey, you're a dwarf. Dwarfs are historically been pretty good at cold environments, at poison. So, you know, if you're dealing with poison, then you're gonna have some innate resistance of some kind, right? So so on the one hand, in the Pantheon world, we have passives. In the Ashes world, we have stat bonuses. So you may have more constitution, for instance, as a result of being a race. And then augments, which are abilities that make that even though you're the same class as someone of a different race, it plays differently. It feels different because it maybe moves different. Because movement and play, the feel of it is a part of it, which I really like, by the way. So here we are having to compare apples to oranges again. What do we think in this category? So let me ask you what you think, Mox, as kind of overall.
So I think personally that as far as racial bonuses are concerned, that Pantheon has done a better job of fleshing out their races than Ashes has. You get not only some sort of stat bonus, like for dwarves, you get extra hit points. You also get immunity to being disarmed. You also get innate bonus to cold, frigid, and toxic acclamation. You also get blunt weapon skill bonus. And then on top of all that, dwarves get an advantage against the avenging disposition. And we haven't talked about disposition on this show yet, but that's basically when a mob spawns in, it has a certain disposition, meaning how it will react to you when you attack it. Some are alarmists, meaning they're going to run around and get the mobs near you.
Call their friends. Yeah,
they're going to call their friends, and some are avenging, meaning they're going to retaliate in some way. So there's all different kinds of dispositions. When mobs spawn in, they uniquely will have a disposition. And when you kill a mob today, it will have one disposition, and it may have another disposition tomorrow. So nothing is ever necessarily the same type of encounter.
Okay, wow.
So each race has some sort of bonus to disposition. So you get all 5 different things that you're getting for picking a given race. That's a lot.
It is a lot, and so I wonder. I mean, look, a lot. I want to say yes. I fully think that's amazing. A lot is also a lot, though. How good am I going to be as a player, knowing, okay, hey, there's 5 different things, and the 4th one in the dark mirror is this, and I'm going to be doing a lot of this. I want to have a dark mirror that I want to use because of that, without having to do a lot of research on the front end. And I'm saying there's a lot to hold in my head, and I wonder, you know, maybe if that diversity, or diversity is the wrong word, but having that much there is complexity for the sake of complexity.
And is it going to pigeonhole certain classes into certain races?
And they've already done that. So I wonder.
Well, I mean, even more so. Like, let's say 6 races can be warriors, but because of these 5 racial bonuses, are they really limiting it? Is it really 6? Or is it really you have a choice of 2?
Yeah.
Because the racial bonuses make it such that you need to be a dwarf. Or you need to be, you know, X or Y.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Because you can't be disarmed. So, we're going against a boss mob that disarms. So we only want a boss tank or a dwarf tank that's going to fight that boss.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, so I think there's going to be some, with that kind of complexity, you are going to get some unintended consequences that are going to show up no matter what. And I don't know if that's a plus or a minus. If that's something we shouldn't even consider. That to me brings the Pantheon down a notch, given that it's strong. On the Ashes side, I don't like that. Okay, stat bonuses are stat bonuses, right? Hey, guess what? You get an extra +2 to health because you're a dwarf, right. Or you get, you know, I don't know what else to think of to say. But to me, that doesn't seem as strong as racial passives. But then they have the augments thing, and I really like that. I love that I could play a tank elf or a tank human, and the human may, or even, like, let's say a tank dwarf, to make, you know, the elf is going to feel nimble. Even though it's a tank, it's going to be light on its feet, or it's going to feel different to playing that same class on the dwarf, who's probably going to be a lot heavier.
The elf may have an augment that gives it a bonus to dodge, let's say, but a human might have a bonus to block with a shield.
I don't know if they're going to be bonuses, though. Right, because that gets into the world of passives, so like you have more of a bonus to block with a shield, and they're not doing that.
Something that is enhancing. That's how it's going to feel different. It has to feel different through some mechanic. It can't just. It doesn't feel different because of your mouse, right?
Yeah. Well, they've said that augments. They've said that augments are abilities. I want to know more. You know,
Right.
I've not seen enough.
But it might be something that you click. I click in a building, I have dodge, higher dodge for 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And then, or I click this button and my block rating goes up by X for a certain amount of time.
Yeah, and that's entirely possible. In fact, that's probably what I expect. So it's not a racial passive. It's a racial active. That's what an augment is.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting. I mean, that just dawned on me. So it's really kind of cool.
So it's interesting, but is it enough?
Yeah.
To make you choose one, and really, because a racial passive should be almost become the tiebreaker. Like, I really want to play race X or race Y. Then and
all things being equal on the aesthetic.
Being equal on the aesthetics, exactly. I mean, equally like both of those. Then you have to have something to fall back on to besides like what are my friends going to play and things like that. But
let me tell you this. I think here's my honest attitude. I think that Pantheon is probably a step ahead in this category of Ashes, but just a step. I mean, this one is a just eked across the finish line by a hair, right? Like a head.
Like a 3-2 win.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like both of them have done very well, and I like what I'm seeing for both games. I just think that the passives are so well thought out on the Pantheon side. I think I'm willing to go with a Pantheon win in that regard. So,
and it also falls in the category of if they had told us more about augments, it might have at least tipped it to a tie.
Yes, absolutely. More information is going to help us make these decisions as if we are the judge and jury in this case. As if anybody cares what we think, Mox. So, okay, so we have decided, I think, that Pantheon probably wins in the racial bonuses category. Let's move on to lore. Here we have, when it comes to lore, we're talking about the background, we're talking about the history, we're talking about the religion. I think lore is a very well understood idea when it comes to these things. And we've been careful, I think, throughout our episodes to talk. It's not enough to just design a race by its aesthetic. Here's the way it looks. There's got to be a context, history about it, that comes out. So, Mox, let me ask you to start us off on lore. What do you think about this?
This is a tough one, because I think there's some areas where the information that we've gotten has been great, but some of this is going to be, for both games, is going to be more like you find it out in-game.
Right.
It's kind of like
they don't want to reveal too much.
Seeing the trailers for a movie, then you go see the movie, and then did you go see a comedy, and did you see every funny moment in the trailer, and then you're disappointed. Yeah,
and I don't want them to reveal too much. I think I agree. I want enough to make me interested, but I don't want too much because then it's spoilers.
Right. I think of the two on the information given, I think that I've gotten a better feel for the Pantheon stuff, but that could be personal bias. It's really difficult for me to say. I think when we were talking about Pantheon, I felt like the religion side was a little under fleshed out, but you kind of were impressed by the religion of Pantheon. I thought that the history and the backgrounds, especially stuff that Joppa went through in his videos, was interesting. So
yes.
I think this is going to be a close one. I probably have to say that for me personally, it's probably a slight Pantheon win.
Okay.
Just due to the fact that I think that especially and the ease in which to find the information too is going to play into this. I think Pantheon's site is easier to go to and find information than Ash's site because you can't just click on like a racist button.
On their website. Now, I was in the wikis, and honestly, that's where I would send everybody. Go to those wikis and go check those out, because that's really where you're going to find the information. And
now, you know that wiki is not a reliable source. Because you cannot put that in any college paper. And as
if we're a reliable source. We're news and information that you can't trust. So
we're infotainment.
Yeah, it's like we're just a bunch of idiot moron talking heads that think they know what they're talking about, but actually we don't. So, okay, so I think you sized me up right with religion. I was impressed with Pantheon with the weaving of religion into its races. I think they, and now not every one of them were strong. I've got to say that, but where there was a patron goddess, and their relationship with that one, and how, and their history and what brought them to, I thought religion was pretty good. I was underwhelmed, and I actually think it's deliberate. I want to be a little bit more fair to the Ashes side. I think Ashes has not said, hey, this religion is kind of what this race does, because they don't want people to be limited. They want that to be your decision when you get into the game and start playing it. I want to subscribe to that religion, and it's a general open free-for-all, and you get to decide or not have one at all. So I want to acknowledge that. I want to be very careful to say, yes, I think I get that. At the same time, I kind of like when there's some of that when there's some of that baggage, right, in a race's trunk, and they have to contend with that and reject that or go in a new way. And that colors. I mean, you don't start off with a clean slate. You start off with a mess, and you have to make something of that. And I like that complexity in religious design when it comes to these races.
Yeah.
So I think for me, Pantheon probably is winning there.
But again, close.
No, I don't think it was close, actually. I think Pantheon, just from what I read, like you get on the wikis and you show me all of that there is on this. Well, the Ashes, there was a paragraph about that big for each one. And there was some other stuff, right? But compared to a whole page of in fact, it got tedious reading through the Pantheon
Yeah, because
stuff.
some of them were like quotes from religious figures and such.
Yeah, there was it got a bit tedious where I actually had to push through reading all of the background and the history and stuff, and sometimes I kind of got the cheat and Cliff Notes versions, into YouTube videos to make it a lot faster, kind of a thing. But there's a lot there, and so to me, I just think that Pantheon has been very deliberate and has been very and I think they've leveraged a thing or two in their racial design that I think really, really makes adds a dimension to the races that I think is very valuable. So to me, I think, for you, it's probably Pantheon win, eked it out. For me, I think it's decisive. So
so solid Pantheon win we'll go with.
Solid Pantheon win on the lore. All right, so the next topic here is politics.
Now, I was always told never discuss politics.
I know, right?
Or religion, but we just
politics or religion.
Rule, so.
That's all we've been talking about.
The whole hog.
We've made everybody angry. Dang it. So when it comes to politics, we've used this one for a lack of a better word, in all honesty. Really, we wanted to talk about the way that the races relate to each other, which I thought sucked in both games.
Yeah, and again, this could be something that just needs to be fleshed out when you play the game. You see kind of what are the reactions. There's definitely going to be some sort of faction system in Pantheon. And in fact, it's very complex, and there's going to be sub-factions, and so that's going to be very complex. I don't even know if I've read anything about an Ashes faction system.
Yeah. I think faction comes just based in where you choose to align yourself, throughout the world. If it is a religious group or or a node or whatever. There's factions come out of things, but I don't think that they've designed factions as a thing.
Gotcha. So there won't be any necessarily like gnomes and ogres don't like each other. Period.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think again that's all deliberate. They've made it so that you can do whatever you want to do, and they've withheld that from the lore in order to facilitate that. But to me, that the lore suffers. And that's what I think, the feeling that I'm getting from Ashes. Not that I don't like what's in Ashes. I want to be very clear. I do like what I'm seeing, but I think that they've allowed, we're comparing apples to oranges in so many ways here. So
yeah. Opportunities lost, so to speak.
Absolutely. For me, the politics, all I saw with regard to how one race had related to another in its history, there was a hint of in both, and it was always human and elf, but in both games. In the human history, I think in Pantheon, they had settled and were not doing very well, and it felt to me very much like Thanksgiving, right? Where the locals, the elves, showed up to help them out and get them on their feet, and so they were nice to each other for a little while. That's what I got from Pantheon. Now, what I got from Ashes was that at some point in their history, the elves and the KLR, I think, I may be wrong on that. I will correct myself if I'm wrong, but I think that was what it was. Had at some stage been at war, and it might have been against the elves. That's all we got, and then they moved on.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the context of 9 different races in Pantheon, and let's say 8 different subculture race, of the key 4 plus the Talnar in Ashes, I would expect more of races in their history. And so I don't know what to think of this. To me, I think isn't a clear winner. I think there's just 2 losers for this category.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the only thing that might make a difference would be the fact that there is a faction system, but I don't think that that's enough to say that, like, how all the races are going to interact with each other and such, and how difficult will it be to raise your faction and all that information. So
right.
I say nobody wins.
Nobody wins politics. That sounds fair to me. Okay.
That sounds like real life.
Right. Everybody loses. How true is that? Okay, so the final category is playability with friends. This is a category I think that you and I both decided to tack on. It wasn't in the core set of categories, right, but it matters to us, Mox.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
I want to be able to roll a gnome enchanter. I want to roll a gnome enchanter, and not anyone else.
Are you cosplaying me?
Maybe. So let me, I want to roll something, and I want to be able to go over there and play with my friend who is an ogre. Right. So when do I get to do that? When does that start? I mean, I know at some stage I'm going to be able to, but if I want to level with my friends, now it becomes a thing. So right. How restricted is each game? Or does it promote that? Does it facilitate and make it?
We know that Ashes is not restricted.
Yes.
You can be any class and any race and start anywhere. Like, It is totally free and open. You just basically, I want to spawn at this, like, did you say they call it a life gate?
It's a divine gateway. I made sure to remember. Gateway, that's right. Because I know it's a gateway of some kind, but it's a divine gateway.
You get to pick what divine gateway. So you're making your character, your friend's making their character. You can both choose divine gateway X, and you spawn in there, and then from the get-go, you guys play together, and all is well. Whereas with Pantheon, I'm going to be starting over in Gnome Land. You're going to be starting over in Human Land, and how far apart are they? I think what we've heard is that roughly 5th level or so, there's going to be some sort of intermingling, but how much intermingling? There's multiple continents that we're dealing with. I believe it's 3 now, continents that we're dealing with. If I'm on continent A and you're on continent B, how difficult is it? Like, will I be able to travel? Will it cost me money to do that? And that is important in this, like, in the world where we're being social. I mean, it's the idea of this game.
I think both of them have mentioned that they want to kind of limit and restrict easy movability around the map.
Travel. Oh, yeah.
You have to travel, right? And you have to, and there's risk to traveling. Both of these games have risk versus reward, and if you're going to travel, there's going to be risk.
Right.
And that kind of gates it when you're too low level to be able to be out there and handle the risk. And so
exactly,
that becomes a thing. I don't know, Mox, what do you think? Are we feeling like this is an Ashes win? Is it pretty solid?
This is a solid Ashes win.
I think so too. Okay, so I think we have progressed through all of our categories, and it looks to me like we're talking about a slight Pantheon win over Ashes with a score of 3-2.
Yeah, I would concur.
Yeah, and all of them are terrible at politics.
Right.
So everybody lost in some way at least as well. So that sounds fun. So yeah, this has been a fun episode. Round 1 to Pantheon. We're gonna be doing this. Classes is gonna come at some stage. Maps. There's a lot more to talk about. So we will get there. But okay, one to Pantheon.
Yep.
And sooner or later we'll have a rematch because there's more coming. This is early alpha. All right, go ahead, please, and gloat. that maybe
I won't gloat. It was, and where, so basically they each had two solid. Well, I guess Pantheon had two solid wins with lore and quantity. Ashes had one solid win and then a couple of close wins. So it was all in all, I think it was a fair assessment of where things are. Hopefully, the things that we don't like will maybe get adjusted. You never know. We'll see what happens.
And again, I mean, it's so two things we have to completely keep in mind. A, we're pre-alpha. Everything is a moving target. There's so much stuff that's going to be different, and then B, we're comparing apples to oranges. I mean, they're both MMORPGs, but they're going to be so different in so many different ways.
Right.
I'm a fan of the one, you're a fan of the other, and so we're comparing and contrasting the worlds of Pantheon and Ashes of Creation. But sometimes that's not going to be easy, and I think we're starting to discover that for sure in this episode.
We are happy to announce that we are connecting with other content creators. Drac has started featuring our content on Pantheon Plus and has also completed a profile of me, and Sechari's is on the way. We'll definitely have a link to that video in the description and to the Pantheon Plus channel.
Okay, so let us get started in our Comquest. The Comquest, obviously. There were some really cool entries. Thank you guys for all of you who jumped in and took a stab at our last episode's Comquest, which was to design an event, come up with the name of it, and tell us about it. What on earth would it celebrate? I think hands down we're going to award this one to Archangel 223. It was incredible. We actually had to reach out with him. He didn't supply a name for it. But the name that we were like, you've just done so much. I can't believe how much you fleshed this out. I mean, here's a lot of detail. So we pinned the comment. We said, hey, what do you want to name your event? And he called it the Day of Renata, Latin for rebirth. So very cool. It was just honoring the Light Pact alliances. Or I think it's a one alliance. His whole idea was it was just kind of like Thanksgiving, where you have mages that cast spells on people. And it limits their sight. It limits light from them, and so their world becomes a lot smaller. And then they are led by what he calls a song caller, And there's feasts and whatever throughout the thing. But I really liked at the end of it, he brings everyone to this kind of like Burning Man. There's a phoenix where they light the thing on fire, and then they lift the veil from everybody, and everyone can see. And as the straw phoenix burns up, there's a stone phoenix underneath with its wings spread to celebrate creation. I just thought that was incredible. Very good. Archangel 223, we were both very impressed, and hands down, that was by far the best answer. We are very impressed. So you got pinned, my friend. Congratulations. All right, Mox. So tell us about this episode's Comquest question.
So we are inviting you, our viewers, to attack us since we're flagged for PvP. Did we get any of these categories totally wrong? If you think so, tell us which ones and why. The most convincing one will get pinned. As always, you can find us on Facebook.com/Disparate Worlds. Our Twitter is @Disparate Worlds, and our website is disparateworlds.org. In addition, on our website and in the description below is a link to our Discord channel. Please join us there. We would love to chat with you about this topic and everything having to do with Ashes and Pantheon.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for joining us. Always, wonderful to have you hang out with us for an episode. Very cool. Definitely want to thank you for watching. Do us a favor, drop a comment. Do the whole like and subscribe thing. That's always much appreciated. There's that notification bell. Don't forget that. If you click that thing, it will notify you, so that way you will not miss upcoming episodes. All of that said, take care of yourselves, our friends. Remember always to be immovable in your principles and irresistible in your passion.